Imagine you're standing in the Hawaiian Islands in the late 1800s. The air is warm, the volcanic mountains are majestic, and the fields are filled with towering sugarcane. This was the heart of Hawaii's economy, a green ocean of sweetness that powered the islands. But lurking in the shadows of this paradise was a relentless enemy. 3 species of invasive rats, the Polynesian, Norway, and roof rats, had infested the plantations. These weren't just a nuisance, they were a catastrophe. They gnawed through the sugarcane stalks, destroying an estimated 10% of the entire crop each year. For the powerful sugar barons, this translated into millions of dollars in lost revenue, a financial bleed that couldn't be ignored. The plantation owners were desperate for a solution. They tried everything they could think of to stop the rat apocalypse. They set out countless traps, but the rats were smart and learned to avoid them. They deployed poison, but it was a risky and often ineffective strategy against a rodent population that reproduced so quickly. The rats were always one step ahead, their numbers exploding across the fields faster than any control method could keep up. The frustration was immense. It felt like trying to empty the ocean with a bucket. The sugarcane industry needed a silver bullet, a definitive weapon to win the war against the rats and protect their vast, profitable empire. That's when they heard whispers of a miracle solution from another island nation. In Jamaica, sugar planters had faced a similar rat problem and had supposedly solved it by introducing a small, lightning-fast predator, the small Indian mongoose. Known for hunting rodents and snakes in its native lands, the mongoose was hailed as a biological hero. The Hawaiian planters, captivated by these stories of success, saw the mongoose as their savior. They believed that by bringing this natural rat killer to Hawaii, they could unleash it upon the fields and let nature take its course. It seemed like a brilliant, clean, and permanent fix to a problem that had plagued them for years. So the plan was set in motion. In 1883, a shipment of 72 small Indian mongooses arrived from Jamaica and were eagerly released into the Hamakua district on Hawaii's Big Island. The planters watched with hope as these sleek predators disappeared into the sugarcane. To ensure the population would thrive, a second, larger shipment was brought directly from India in 1885 to diversify the gene pool. Within just a few years, the mongoose population had exploded and spread. By 1890, they were firmly established on the Big Island, Maui, Molokai, and Oahu. Only the island of Kauai was spared, apparently due to a lucky accident where the crates of mongooses were never unloaded from the ship. The introduction of the mongoose was celebrated as a bold step forward, a definitive victory for the sugar industry. Planters eagerly awaited reports that the rat population was finally declining and their crops were safe. They expected to see their profits rebound as the furry little assassins went to work. But the good news never came. The rat damage to the sugarcane continued, seemingly unaffected by the presence of their supposed arch-nemesis. In some areas, the problem even seemed to get worse. The planters were baffled. They had imported a world-renowned rat killer, and yet the rats were still running rampant. What could have possibly gone wrong with their perfect plan? The answer lay in a simple, yet catastrophic biological mismatch that no one had bothered to research. It was a fatal flaw hidden in plain sight. The daily schedules of the two animals were completely opposite. Rats, as most people know, are primarily nocturnal. They are creatures of the night, emerging from their burrows after sunset to forage, feed, and cause their agricultural mayhem under the cover of darkness. The mongoose, on the other hand, is strictly diurnal. It is an animal of the sun, actively hunting and exploring during the daylight hours and returning to its den to sleep as night falls. The two species lived in two different worlds, their active hours almost never overlapping. This meant the grand showdown between predator and prey simply never happened. The mongoose would wake up and patrol the sugarcane fields all day, finding very few rats to hunt because they were all asleep in their burrows. Then, as the mongoose went to bed for the night, the rats would emerge and feast on the sugarcane, completely safe from the predator that was supposed to be controlling them. The two animals were like ships passing in the night, coexisting in the same habitat but rarely ever encountering one another. The mongoose, a ferocious and effective predator, had been brought halfway across the world for a job it was biologically incapable of performing. The entire endeavor, which had been built on so much hope and expense, was a complete and utter failure. The mongooses were not controlling the rats, and the sugar industry's problem remained unsolved. But the story doesn't end there. the hungry mongooses, unable to find their intended prey, didn't just disappear. Instead, they did what any successful invasive species does: they adapted. They turned their attention away from the elusive rats and began to look for other sources of food. This desperate search for a meal would soon unleash an ecological disaster that would change the Hawaiian Islands forever, far beyond the borders of the sugarcane fields. With the nocturnal rats safely out of reach, the diurnal mongooses turned their predatory instincts toward the easiest targets they could find: Hawaii's native wildlife. For millions of years, the island's birds, reptiles, and insects had evolved in isolation, a paradise free from any ground-dwelling mammalian predators. They had no natural defenses, no fear, and no instincts to protect themselves or their young from a swift, intelligent hunter like the mongoose. They were, in a tragic sense, sitting ducks. The mongooses quickly discovered this bounty of defenseless prey and began a devastating campaign of destruction across the island's delicate ecosystems. The most immediate victims were the ground-nesting birds. Species like the iconic nini, or Hawaiian goose, had always laid their eggs in shallow nests on the ground, a strategy that was perfectly safe before the mongooses arrived. Suddenly, their nesting sites became death traps. Mongooses systematically patrolled these areas, devouring eggs, snatching helpless chicks, and even killing adult birds that were too slow to escape. The impact was catastrophic. The Nene population, once estimated at 25,000, plummeted to a mere 30 individuals by the 1950s, a staggering 99.9% decline. Studies confirmed the horror, finding that mongooses were responsible for 77% of all Nena egg losses in some areas. The devastation wasn't limited to the land. The mongooses learned to patrol Hawaii's pristine beaches, timing their hunts with the sea turtle nesting season. Female green and hawksbill sea turtles would laboriously crawl ashore at night to dig their nests and lay their precious eggs. But when the sun rose, the mongooses would arrive. They used their sharp claws and keen sense of smell to locate the nests buried in the sand, digging them up and consuming every single egg. On some beaches, the predation rate reached an astonishing 90%, meaning nearly every future generation of sea turtles was wiped out before it even had a chance to hatch. The cycle of life that had played out on these shores for millennia was shattered in a matter of years. Beyond the birds and turtles, countless other native species fell prey to the insatiable invaders. Unique Hawaiian reptiles, colorful native insects, and even the island's famous tree snails were added to the mongooses' menu. Many of these species, found nowhere else on Earth, were driven to extinction before scientists even had a chance to fully study them. The economic cost of this ecological nightmare also began to mount. By 1999, it was estimated that mongooses were causing $50 million in annual damages in Hawaii and Puerto Rico combined, from lost agricultural poultry to the immense costs of conservation programs trying to save what was left. Today, more than 140 years after their introduction, the mongooses remain a permanent and destructive fixture of the Hawaiian landscape. Their populations number in the hundreds of thousands across the 4 main islands they inhabit, with densities on Maui reaching up to 60 individuals per square mile. The dream of eradicating them is now widely considered impossible. The rugged volcanic terrain, dense forests, and labyrinthine lava tubes provide endless hiding places, making it impossible to find and remove every last animal. The mongooses are also incredibly intelligent and wary, quickly learning to avoid traps and human activity, which makes controlling their numbers a constant uphill battle. Conservationists and wildlife managers are now locked in a perpetual war of containment. Their efforts focus on protecting the most vulnerable native species within heavily fortified areas. They have constructed expensive, predator-proof fences around critical nesting sites for birds like the nane and the Hawaiian petrel. Teams of dedicated workers spend their days setting and checking thousands of traps, a labor-intensive process that only manages to reduce mongoose numbers temporarily in small, targeted locations. It is a defensive strategy, a desperate attempt to hold the line and prevent further extinctions rather than a plan for outright victory. The mongooses, for all intents and purposes, have won. The one glimmer of hope in this story is the island of Kauai. Because of that lucky shipping mishap over a century ago, Kauai remains the only major Hawaiian island that is mongoose-free. This has made it a crucial sanctuary for many of the native bird species that have been wiped out elsewhere. To protect this status, the island maintains a state of high alert. A rapid response program is in place to detect and capture any mongoose that might arrive as a stowaway on a boat or plane. Since 2012, at least 5 live mongooses have been intercepted and captured on Kauai, each one a potential ecological time bomb that was successfully defused before it could detonate. The Mongoose Mayhem in Hawaii stands as one of history's most powerful and tragic cautionary tales. It is a textbook example of biological control gone horribly wrong, a stark reminder of the dangers of introducing non-native species into a balanced ecosystem. The irreversible damage, the extinctions, the shattered food webs, and the immense financial cost has profoundly influenced modern invasive species policies around the globe. Today, governments and scientists approach the idea of biological control with extreme caution, backed by rigorous research and quarantine protocols. The lesson, paid for by the silence of Hawaii's lost birds and the empty turtle nests, is clear. When we play God with nature, we risk creating a hell on Earth.